This is the city and fortress of Belogradchik, Bulgaria. Hello, this is Pierre Ethier, Class 12, and I'm with David, my son.
Hello.
Today's talk is going to be about family. I introduced my son at the beginning of this video because family is something very important to me. I'm going to give a quote by a philosopher that I admire very much. A family is a place where minds come in contact with one another. If these minds love one another, the home will be as beautiful as a flower garden. This was written by Buddha, one of my favorite philosophers. In the church, you always have a problem where they teach and they preach something and they do the exact opposite. The best example is the subject of family and the second dynamic. So family get typically torn apart because even though the way to happiness says love and help children, or the way to happiness says respect and help your parent, or honor and help your parent rather, they violate those rules all the time whenever it's expedient and convenient. And I remember over and over hearing those discussions where people were ordered to disconnect, and people bring the valid argument, well, what it violates the way to happiness. That's only PR, they say. And that will be the quote given by HCO. Family are typically torn apart because the church enforce disconnection policy. Now, it's supposed to be a last resort, and in most religion, shunning or disconnecting, when it's done at all, is done as a last resort. The church currently does it as a first action, as a first resort. If someone disagrees with the church, they are told that they will be declared suppressive if they go past a certain point. If they do it, then they get declared suppressive, or they get told they are not in good standing. Immediately, everyone of their family and friends is going to be told to disconnect, generally as destructively as possible. And this is the way to make them wrong, because they feel that Scientology is the only valid organization, not only on Earth, but in the universe and the history of time. And of course, it's a lie. The organization is as valuable as it can help others. If it harms others, it's certainly not a valid organization. So these clowns in HCO routinely order disconnections. The number of people that have told me their horrible stories of disconnection is in the hundreds. And that's only since I left the church, because when I was in the church, I've seen actually thousands of examples. So essentially, people get told to disconnect not only from suppressive, but anyone not in good standing. And this, of course, is the person who is told, they're told to choose between their marriage and the church. People get told, well, if you choose your marriage, you're suppressive. So in other words, keeping family values is suppressive if the church finds it inconvenient. Here's an example. A celebrity, to not hide her name, Julia McGinnis. That woman started to natter about the church, make cracks. The church was afraid she might defect. She decided she wanted to go to Switzerland, but she had a daughter in common with her ex-husband, who was also a Scientologist in good standing. So the woman alleged wrongdoing of a sexual nature by her husband on the child, which was a pack of lies. And she knew it was a lie. But it was convenient. The church told the ex-husband to not show up in court because they're afraid what she might do. In other words, they order him to never see his daughter, agree with a false accusation that he's a pedophile when he's not, so because the church find it more convenient. And then they order him to fly to be sex checked, to get handled. Of course, it did not change anything. The guy, having still his sanity, decided he wanted to keep his family and keep in communication with his daughter. The church was very upset, and they decided to destroy the auditor, who was ordered to sex check that him, because he did not change his mind. Because according to the church, sex checking is supposed to brainwash someone and change their mind and become docile. Well, there's no such reference, and it's complete nonsense, of course, except in the feverish minds of those imbeciles that are running the church. Now, what happened is that he went to defend his right as a father. The judge found Julia McGinnis completely incredible and not worth of any belief, and therefore nothing happened. She tried to blackmail the church. The lawyers were there to defend, of course, the interests of the church. And what happened? Nothing. No harm was done to the church. And of course, because Julia McGinnis had blackmailed the church, had about that thick of knowledge reports in her ethics file about failing to disseminate Scientology and doing all sort of wrong things, of course she had to be rewarded by David Miscavige, who gave her, at the highest event that year, the Freedom Medal, because of course she had contributed slightly less than Saddam Hussein to the expansion of Scientology. Now, to go back to family values. Family is something very important, and I know because my first marriage was broken by the church, and they ordered me to destroy my second one. The first one, I got married to a nice girl. The only problem is that out of 7 years of marriage, she was 5 years away. They sent her to Los Angeles, they sent her to California, they sent her to Texas, they sent her to Australia, and then they transfer her to California, and we were together 2 years out of 7. And they said, well, that's normal, that's our needs, so screw your second dynamic, that's what is important for us, we don't really care about you. And not only that, I was told that if I wanted to talk to her on the phone, I had to pay the FSO for at the rate of where they make profit. So in other words, if I wanted to talk to my wife more than 15 minutes a day, I would have to borrow money because my pay from the FSO was less than what 15 minutes of phone calls a day would cost paying the church. So that is one of my undisclosed overs on the church. I never paid them because I felt it was abusive all along. About the other aberrant values of the church, people who need to see dying parents or attend their funerals are told this is absurd, this is wrong, because what, you want to see your dying mother? She's a PTS. I remember when I was in the org in Montreal, I approved a staff to go and see his dying mother. He said, hey, Pierre, I need to see my mother. She's dying. I said, fine, take the weekend off. Then this maniac from Follow East US comes and says, what? You approve his day off? We needed him. Of course, there's only 2 students in a classroom. It's really, that's going to make a change in the orbit of the universe. So now, go and recall him. He cannot go to see his dying mother in the hospital. Of course, that woman has given her life to raise him. She has gone through tremendous sacrifices and fed him and nursed him when he was sick. But no, let the old woman die in the rut because we have 2 people to supervise on the course. Of course, that was one of my undisclosed overts. I did not call him, and I claimed to the Follow East US fanatic that I had not been able to reach him. Well, in fact, it was not a lie, because if I had not called him, obviously I was not successful in reaching him. Now, the church has all these aberrant views that the end justified the means, and because they are the only worthy organization in history of universe and that exists in any corner of the galaxy, that anything they think and dictate has to be done and abided as holy law. Another aberrant example, Minty Alexander, Class XII Auditor. In late 1992, and this is one of the things that incited me to differently leave, this woman had a younger child, and that child, she had promised her to spend time with that child. So she had even gone as far as working during her personal time to make up. Then these executive, Miscavige and companies, come, and then they say, no, there is no time with children anymore. We overrule that. We don't care. You haven't seen your child for 20 hours. We don't care. It doesn't matter. And you will have no time to spend with them for months. Doesn't matter. You promise them. It's irrelevant. Because the stats needs to get up. And therefore she protested. So what do? Cruel and unusual punishment, of course. You know, it's against the American Constitution, but it is part of the Miscavige Constitution of Scientology. Cruel and unusual punishment has to be done whenever possible. That's one of the amendments to the Hubbard Constitution of Scientology. So she protested. So what do? They sent her to redo the EPF. Of course, it was an effort to degrade her. Well, she complied. I don't think I would have, but she did. And she completed the EPF in record time, did the exam, and I saw her storming up the stairs, holding the exam result in her hand, 100%. And this was for her a vindication that this was an unnecessary thing. This, incidentally, had been ordered by one of the Miscavige brainwashed zombies of the name of Mark Yeager. Mark Yeager used to be a good guy, but of course, having been declared suppressive by Miscavige too many times, given dozens of wrong items and having had to accept them as true, then he became a zombie, and he did not even protest when Miscavige ordered him order one of his messengers to run him over with the car. Instead of going to the police saying that they tried to kill me and injure me with a vehicle, he just said, well, I deserved it. At any rate, so Mark Yeager had ordered Minty Alexander to be sent to the EPF because she had failed to be utterly, unconditionally obedient to the holy word of Miscavige, which was to accept that parent values only for show. So she then proceeded to talk to her 17-year-old daughter. Her 17-year-old daughter was, believe it or not, the International Justice Chief. In other words, the senior-most person on the subject of justice and ethics. At only 17. At any rate, and she told IJC, and I quote because I was right there, less than 10 feet away from them when they were having that conversation. Mom, you're completely right. This was completely wrong to make you redo the EPF. And if this would happen normally, I would have the order canceled within the hour, and whoever ordered it, head rolling. But I can't do anything. My hands are tied. End of quote. I remember always those words because it shows that IGC itself knew that senior management was corrupt, used justice for vindictive purposes and destroy families, and was unable to do anything. And of course, that's why they put a 17-year-old as IGC, because you cannot really expect a 17-year-old to stand up to an Adolf Hitler type person. Perhaps a mature person, but mature person are never put in charge of ethics. Only young people with no experience in life who are really pencil pushers and yes men. So to summarize, family values is very important, but the church, they will change their story all the time, and they will say, of course, family is important, but like everything else, anything with the church is just for show. Thank you for listening.